What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hobby Hotline Overtime, the new Tuesday night show from us at Hobby Hotline. And as always, my name is Drew, or the DH, and joining me tonight, we've got the man himself, Sports Card Nation, Mr. John Newman.
Yo and hello. Oh, wait, that's not my line.
That's my line. Come on.
Well, you wearing my shirt, I figured I'd steal your line.
There you go.
And John, also, the hobby is the people. The hobby is the people.
The hobby is the people. And also joining me, just like last week, Mr. Mike Moynihan. What's up, dude? Long time no see.
Yeah, a whole week.
I know. What's going on, Brad, DR? What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. As always, please call in, join the show with any questions, comments, anything that you do have. The link is in the chat. Just simply click that link. Mike's been on here, I think he said twice now, and has not had a caller, so we need to break that cherry. So somebody pop that cherry tonight. Call in. Let us know what's going on, Rich, and anything you guys, any questions, anything in the hobby, please let us know. We would love to answer any and all of those questions. But guys, I guess we'll start out this week with some cool baseball news. We had the recent Hall of Fame induction of the Veterans Committee, I believe. Mike, you can correct me if we're wrong here. But the Veterans Committee did do their Hall of Fame inductions, and those were just announced recently. And a couple of very well and deserving people finally in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so one minor detail is that they're called the era committees now. It used to be called the Veterans Committee back in the day, and now they're looking at different eras of baseball history, breaking those down so they can be a little more focused on different players, different contributors, etc. I don't know. I mean, 6 new people, I guess. I wouldn't even say they all played the game for sure. You had in the early days is what they call it. It's Bud Fowler, great Negro League player. And the one I'm actually most thrilled about is Buck O'Neil getting in the Hall of Fame. If you're a baseball fan and a fan of the baseball documentary series, or just knowing what he's done and contributed to the game, the first black coach in Major League Baseball, just what an ambassador, what a great honor for him. It's a shame he should have gotten elected in 2006 when they did a lot of guys from the Negro Leagues. But it's about bloody time, let's put it that way. And then you had the other committee, the Golden Era Committee, and they elected 4 players, which is a lot, by the way. That's normally 1 or 2 is good. You know, they elected 4. I'll talk about the one that didn't get in first, Dick Allen. I'm shocked, honestly. Dick Allen was 1 vote short the last time that committee met. The reason they did 2 committees this year is because last year during COVID, they didn't do this Golden Era Committee. I genuinely think if they would have done it last year and had the vote, that Dick Allen would have gotten in. Not that he hit any more home runs or won any more MVPs or anything in the years since. I just think there was a big rally for some of these other guys that are on the ballot. I did a pre-announcement who I thought should get in and would get in, and I was right mostly because I thought Dick Allen should have gotten in. I thought Minnie Minoso, who did get in, should have been in, and Tony Oliva. And it's funny, I never saw any of these guys play. John might have. He's an old man, but I don't think. But then you had. Sorry, I'll finish up and then I'll let John talk about, especially one of the guys I know he's going to talk a lot about, Jim Cott, who I would not have voted for, and Gil Hodges, who I would not have voted for. And I know John's a huge Dodgers guy. He loves that era of the Dodgers because of Jackie Robinson and all those things. Look, Gil Hodges was a great player. I'm sorry, he was a very, very good player. I do think that he could have had better stats if not for the war. And you could say that about a lot of guys.
Right.
I'm watching that episode of baseball, the documentary by Ken Burns right now, called A National Pastime. It's the 40s.
Incredible documentary, by the way.
It's awesome. I watch it every year. I don't learn something every year because I've watched it so many times, but something sticks again. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, wow, I forgot about like DiMaggio's hitting streak. They were talking about it, 56 games. Everybody knows that number, which will never be. That's a record that'll never be broken. But he was 0 for 4 against the Indians and broke the streak. Then he hit in 16 consecutive games after that. He hit in 72 out of 73 games. I mean, that is unreal accomplishment. I mean, just think about it. And Ted Williams hitting 406 and 40. I mean, so many great things. All these players lost time in the war. Bob Feller, Joe DiMaggio, Whitey Ford, Willie Mays. All these guys lost time because of the war. And Willie Mays not in Major League Baseball, but in Negro, he was playing in the Negro Leagues at the time. So you just had this. Gil Hodges was a victim of that, I think, and I think he would have hit some more iconic type milestones had he not missed that time. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. I mean, again, it happened to so many players. It's kind of like steroids. Everybody used them, so just look at the numbers and call it what it is. How do you? So, John, I know you're a huge fan of Gil Hodges, and convince me I'm wrong that he should be in the Hall of Fame.
All right, I'm going to be the lawyer here for Mr. Gil Hodges. Now I'm biased. Let's set the record. Be honest. I'm from Brooklyn. As a kid, I bowled on Gil Hodges' bowling alley, his lanes that his family owned. He was already obviously passed on, but I've met his son at the bowling alley, and I believe I met his wife. I was younger, so my memory's a little sparse. I know I talked to his son at the bowling alley. I believe his wife as well. 3-time Gold Glove. Arguably, probably should have won more. Most of his contemporaries said he was the best fielding first baseman of his era. 2 World Series titles, 1 with the Dodgers. The Miracle Mets in '69 had no business being there. He died of a heart attack in 72. And arguably, if barring that heart attack killing him, he probably would have got in. I know it's easy to say, but he probably would. Most would argue that he probably would have got in on his managerial skills as well. So, I know we can't, predict. Well, if he didn't pass away, and that your record is 8 All-Stars. 7 pennants, and he played in New York, obviously with 3 teams, right? The Giants, the Dodgers, and the Yankees. And when you're going, when your contemporaries are Mays, Mantle, and even on his own team, in Schneider and Jackie Robinson, he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. And so I think he was overshadowed in his own city, being New York. But when you take that stuff away, you look at the numbers, the pennants, the Gold Gloves, 8 All-Star games, a World Series as a player, a World Series as a manager, and then his managerial career basically cut short by his massive heart attack, which unfortunately killed him. Again, I'm biased, but I think he's in. I mean, when he retired from baseball, I think he was 3rd in the home run list for first baseman. Obviously, we know a lot of these numbers now. Guys have moved down the ranks as other guys moved up. So I think Hodges is a Hall of Famer. Probably should have been in before this year, but it was nice seeing him, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Mike said with Buck O'Neil. That should have happened when that gentleman was alive. That's sort of sad. That he doesn't get to enjoy that experience. And that was a huge, we can argue Hodges and make probably points, pros and cons on both sides of that aisle.
Sure.
I think most people would tell you for what Buck O'Neill's done for baseball, there's not a lot of comments in the con side. It's all pros and should have been in. I don't know. I don't, like Mike said, I don't know how he wasn't in that year when they put in a lot of the Negro leaguers and overlooked him. But better late than never. I mean, that's for sure. But I would have loved to. That's a guy that, great articulate man. I would have loved to seen that Hall of Fame acceptance speech while he was still with us.
That's some of the big ones that was with me. Is I would have loved to have seen the speeches. I think they're especially with some of the guys that got in this year, like you guys said. We've got a question from DR in the comments from a couple minutes back. Wanted to answer before it gets a little too late, but he asked, do you guys think Hall of Famers should take into account, or I guess voters should take into account, how far a player had to rise or the obstacles they had to overcome, or just purely based on statistical success? Because myself personally, I mean, if I'm answering that question, you've got to take into account the obstacles and things they had to overcome. It's not the Hall of Statistics. I mean, it's the Hall of Fame. It's everything that they had to do for the game and everything that they mean to the game. And I think all these players, and a lot of the players that we're talking about right now, are great examples of players that meant a lot more to the game than just statistics. And so that's why, at least in my opinion, you definitely have to take those obstacles and things that they had to overcome into account.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the overall body of work and everything in getting there as well. I think we also got to keep in mind, and I think they do, what eras these guys played in.
Yes.
When you think, well, Gil Hodges hit 353 home runs in today's baseball, there's guys that have that already. And so people will say, geez, that's nothing really compared to some players nowadays. But it's a different, and I think Michael agrees. It's a different era. It's a different league. So you can't just compare stats to stats all the time. I think you can only do that with players really from the same sort of graduating class, if you will. Whoever you graduated high school with, that's right. Got to measure yourself up. I don't think you can go that far errors and compare it to today's game. So, when you look at Hodges' numbers compared to today's era, I get that argument. But what he did in that era, and like Mike said, you got the war, and you got, I think, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but he played in the city with some serious first ballot, no-brainer Hall of Famers that he had to, I don't want to say take a back seat, but sort of played in their shadow. And,
before Uncle Rich jumps through the television here and strangles me, I want to say a couple things. Like, I'm not upset that any of these, just because I wouldn't vote for him doesn't mean I'm a big Hall guy. And that means I think we need to honor the history of the game. I don't want to let every Tom, Dick, and Harry in, but at the same time, it's already the most exclusive Hall of Fame there is in the major sports. 1% of all players get into the Hall of Fame one day, including the Gil Hodgeses of the world and Minnie Minosos and all these different players. So him being in no way upsets me, angers me, anything like that. I'm thrilled for him. I have more cards to go chase and things to collect, and so I'm excited about that. But and yes, Rich is right. He is a Hall of Famer now as of Sunday night. So congratulations to all the guys that made it in the Hall of Fame. It's a big deal. Unfortunately, it happens sometimes posthumously, and that's a shame. At least Gil Hodges' wife is still alive, which is amazing, by the way, and living in the same house in Brooklyn that they lived in the 40s. That's just crazy to me to think about. But good for them. You got Tony Oliva still alive. Jim Cott is still alive. So they'll get to enjoy a summer in Cooperstown, New York, next July. What's funny, they had a new Hall of Fame. There's a new Hall of Fame president. And I've always said that's the one job I would loved in all of sports. If I could have one job, it'd be the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame. I would move to Cooperstown, New York from Texas tomorrow if they called me and said, "Hey, do you want that job?" But I love watching that announcement. We'll have another one. The writers' ballots are out right now. 9 have so far been turned in or made public, so to speak. They have basically the month of December to vote. You've got so many guys last year, Bonds, Clemens, Schillings last year. And it's going to be interesting. You got Poppy, Big Poppy, A-Rod, known roids, busted for roids, suspicions of roid. I mean, you've got all this stuff. It's been on the ballot for a long time because Sosa and McGuire and Palmeiro and all these players. By the way, everyone I just named should be in the Hall of Fame. But in my opinion, because I look at it like an era, right? You can't tell me watching Barry Bonds, you didn't go, "Oh my gosh," and stop what you're doing and watch him hit. Or McGuire, especially during '98. There's just so many things that I look back on and I go, Barry Bonds, best player I've ever seen play.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
And in my lifetime that I've seen play, and the fact that
I'm not
it's tragic.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Barry Bonds guy, but I'll make the argument. He probably, even before he started using, he had a Hall of Fame resume. So
I would agree.
And listen, I'm not a Barry Bonds apologist. So
no, I mean,
I don't think he's it's not Hall of Humans. I don't think he's a great person. It's the Hall of Fame for baseball, for your playing exploits. And if you look at the numbers, even before his hat size went up 2 sizes,
right.
he should have probably been in. So, I don't know. You mentioned Jim Cott. I don't want to spend a ton of time, Mike, but I sort of lean towards what you're saying there too. I looked up his numbers. He had 283 wins, but he played 25 years. So a lot of people said he kind of compiled stats, kind of hung on at the end. His last 5 years, he had 8 combined wins. So you could actually make that argument for him or against him and say, well, he still had 275 through 20 years and then only got 8 more in the next 5. That might have hurt him. Or you could say, well, he had 275 in 20 years, not 283 in 25. I mean, he had a lot of numbers. He did have three or four 20-game winning seasons, which is a great stat. In today's era, you don't even see 20 gamers anymore. So I get that one, man. He was so that if you want to talk about a guy that's like literally straddling the border of in the Hall of Fame and out of the Hall of Fame, Jim Cott's probably one of those guys that got one leg. Now he's got both of them and he's in. But before this vote, really straddling that line. Dick Allen, again, 1 vote short. I think most would say he should be in. I don't know what happens, with that. And it's sad that it's one thing not getting in, but it's like to get that close twice. It's like you're right there, and you're not in. And I know he's passed away. But go ahead,
your
Mike.
question. Dick Allen will be on the ballot again in 5 years. They're doing that era every 5 years, and so he'll get another shot.
Well, we've got
to get in.
We've got a couple questions here in the comments. One of them speaking on players, more recently. Buster Posey announces retire recently, and Cooter Legit says, yes or no for the Hall of Fame in 5 years when Buster Posey gets the nomination. What do you guys think? I know what I think, but I'll let you guys go first.
I would vote no.
So now, it's funny. I had this conversation at the card show I did on Sunday. A person I know came to my table, and I don't know, I wouldn't call him a Buster Posey like super collector, but he kind of collects them a little bit. And he asked me, he goes, John, you think he gets in? And I'm like, I think he does. I'm not saying I think he should be. He just asked me, do I think he gets in? And I think he gets in. What we've seen, and Mike can piggyback on, catchers kind of have their own kind of criteria.
Yeah.
They're almost in their own, it's almost like kickers in football. That's, I'll compare catchers in Major League Baseball to kickers in football. They're kind of held to, what they're specialized, what they do, and compared to catchers perform. So with that criteria, Posey, Yadier Molina's going to get in. If you looked at their numbers, if I just put up their stats and didn't even put their name on the screen, you wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame. If they were just a silhouette, here's their numbers, they wouldn't get in. But catchers have a different criteria that they're measured to, whether they get in or not. So I don't disagree with Mike. I don't know if Posey's a Hall of Famer. I just think he's going to be voted in.
I don't think he is one, but I do, like you just said, I don't think he is one, but I think he does get in because of what you were just saying a minute ago, the era that he was in and the people that are going to be around, the people that are going to be on the ballot in those years. I don't know. I see him getting in. I've never been a huge Posey fan, but I mean, to me, he's definitely not first ballot. He's definitely, it's going to take him some time, I think, if he does get in. But if it was me, I'd keep him out. But I don't know. What's up, Mike? What do you think?
Well, there's a couple of things that helped both Molina and Posey.
Yeah, the World Series.
They won World Series. Posey won 3. Molina's won 2, I guess, maybe 3. And they're both great defensive catchers.
Yep.
Personally, if you were to say of that era, which catcher do I, of kind of the 2002-ish to now, I think Joe Mauer should be in the Hall of Fame before those two guys. He was a much better player overall. Certainly better. I mean, Mauer as a catcher won several batting titles, for crying out loud. The other guys, again, good players. This isn't a knock on them. It's a big deal, and I don't take it lightly. I do think Molina and Posey will both get in. I wouldn't vote for either one of them, honestly. And I would vote for Mauer, which maybe that sounds weird. I would vote for Munson too. Everybody's been mentioning Munson.
Yeah.
If you put Munson stats against Posey, it's not even close. And if you talk about eras, it was Munson and Johnny Bench. Those were the catchers in the 1970s, right? So to say, if you want to look at an era, Munson was one of the best in his era. Bench was better, but Munson was really good, right? And his career was cut short because of tragedy. You could look at that and say, well, he would have played longer for sure. And so that is, again, I just think if you're going to put Posey in, Molina, hey, Munson.
And that's the other thing too, guys, is sometimes when someone gets in that's arguable, it then opens, whether you want to call it lowering the bar, it sort of opens the door for people to say, well, look at those numbers or look at that guy. If he's in, we got to go back and put this guy in now. I remember one of the guys, Rizzuto kind of brought that talk out, Nelly Fox, Aparicio. Some people pointed to guys like that and said, we're going to, let them in and we got to let, so that's I don't want to say danger. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but that's the Pandora's box that gets opened when certain guys get in. And, that'll always be like that. I don't think you really can't avoid it, but that's what tends to happen. So
Chris Harris has a cool stat here. There's 16 catchers in the Hall of Fame. Munson and Posey are 12th and 14th in all-time WAR among catchers. So, like you said, lots of things in Posey's favor, lots of things in Munson's favor as well. But like you said, Mauer, you got to look at. So A lot of different ones, but to answer that question earlier for Posey, for me, it would be a no.
The thing with Mauer too, he played first base towards the end of I don't know how many years. I wonder if that will hurt his resume. That
Finch did too.
Yeah. Posey played a little first base there, here and there.
I mean,
in the end too. So
I just think what's fun about it is it's a great thing to debate. I don't know that there's not usually this black and white answer to yes or no, Hall of Famer, yes or no. We all have things that are important to us. That's why there's 400 and some odd writers that get to cast their opinion. Yeah. And if 75% of them agree that this person meets that criteria, whatever it might be, they'll get voted in. I don't like the writers. Somebody had a question earlier about allowing fans to vote. I think that would be a huge mistake.
Yes.
But I don't know that the writers is the right answer either. Mm-hmm. But I think if you let old Hall of Famers vote, there'd be a lot of cronyism and things like that. How do you get a well-educated knowledge base of people that will be unbiased by personal issues? The answer is you can't. We're human beings. Right. And so it's an impossible task to try to say, let's get these numbers or whatever. We talk about automation and grading in the hobby.
Yeah.
And let's have automated voting
for
the Hall of Fame.
Might as well.
I don't know who's in.
No.
And Munson, I gotta say, Munson to me, again another New York guy. My favorite player as a kid. The first time I learned what death was when Thurman Munson's plane crashed. I believe it's the first time I cried over someone dying, especially not related to me personally. And I remember hearing it on the news, asking my grandpa, who I was raised by. So that, I didn't know the really what death was. So I said to him, Grandpa, does that mean he's not going to play baseball anymore? And my grandfather obviously had to explain to me the finality of life. And then it really hit home, and tears came. So I'm sentimental to Thurman. And again, cut short, I think it was John Keating said, war didn't matter back then. It wasn't really a stat that was utilized. And like Mike said, you had Bench in the National League, you had Thurman in the American League, and there wasn't an argument. There wasn't a debate over those two guys in there as the best players at their position in those leagues. And so I'm biased. I hope someday the Munson family gets to celebrate that day, potentially, like the Hodges family did this weekend. And we'll see. And like Mike said, that's the fun, is to have these discussions and debates, and not to get, don't make it personal. You can support your candidate, and, we don't get to vote. So it is going to be what it is.
Somebody put a comment, writers are biased, a blend of players. It was that 70s card show, blend of players and writers decision. Look, I agreed that writers are biased. That's why you have 400 and something of them, so that it dilutes some of that bias. Right. If you just pick all New York writers, we'd have a Hall of Fame with Jorge Posada and Bobby Bonilla, and my point is, Don Mattingly would be in the Hall of Fame and doesn't deserve to be. I know somebody said Don Mattingly, or it was Raw and Cut Cards. Adam said that. He's wrong. No, I'm just kidding. That's the point. He can think that. Right. And he can make a great argument. I can think what I think. If you have enough people, you can dilute out the bias.
Yes.
And it becomes more reasonable. Again, far from perfect, but I don't know that you can have a perfect system. Man, that's half an hour on the Baseball Hall of Fame. First of all, I love it, but
yeah,
I bet we.
But if you look at the chat room, it's a hot button topic, I think, and
it is.
I think like it matters to you, Mike, and I care a lot about it. I think a lot of other people, especially, absolutely. I live an hour and 10 minutes from Cooperstown. I'm there usually a couple times a year, so
I mean, if you don't know, I think it's important also for people to keep the history needs to be talked about, especially, I mean, if you're going to talk to Hall of Fame and you're going to talk about it, talk about it much more than just the voting, to have the discussions, have the everything. I mean, that's important for, and especially any type of content. I think, it is to educate people on the history of baseball. I know I do that a lot with Jude. I'm teaching him quite a bit about baseball and learning quite a bit myself. Because I'm far from the biggest vintage, vintage head in the world.
And piggybacking off that, Drew, I did a show Sunday here at Syracuse at the State Fairgrounds, and I saw a lot of younger guys. One thing that really warmed my heart as a dealer from that side of the table, I saw a lot of younger kids, I'll say 15, 16, real early 20s, buying vintage guys, and talking about not just buying them, but having conversations about them. And I love to see that, and had some conversations personally with those younger folks. And it was refreshing to see. We can get, I don't know where we want to go next, but you got the lockout going on. If there's a work stoppage that extends into the season, this is right up. I do vintage. Mike does vintage.
Yeah.
It's going to really put a heavier spotlight. I think there should be a heavier spotlight on it anyway, but I think it's going to be even more so if that's what occurs.
Well, I have a question right there off of that for both of you. Now that we do have this lockout, which Mike and I discussed last week in depth on the show. It was right before it happened when we did last week's show, and we were talking about how we didn't even really see the point, but here we are. Now that it is here and it is happening, where do you see people? Where do you see the baseball hobby going? Do you see people going towards the vintage aspect, or do you see people going more towards prospecting? Do you think it's more the minor league stuff? Some of the bowmen might take the front seat to tops possibly. What do you think it's gonna be? Vintage or more modern? Because it's got to go somewhere.
Does it? Can the hobby not just go down?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another option. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've seen, if we want to get into the market report, I think we've seen corrections price-wise across the board. I think if there's a work stoppage, I think I've heard people who are, if you want to call them anti-fanatics or Tops diehards. I've heard people say, now you can say anything, right? You can scream from the rooftops, I'm going to do this, and then not do it. But I've heard quite a few people, whether it's on social media or verbally, say, hey, if nothing changes and Fanatics doesn't buy Tops or gets the licensing, I'm not supporting Fanatics. I'll just go buy Tops cards already made, whether that's vintage or even now cards, that's a possibility. If there's a work stoppage where there's no baseball being played, Mike made a great point. Like people might get out. We'll think back what happened in '94. History can repeat itself. Actually, history usually does repeat itself. What tells us that? History. So if there's a serious work stoppage, now I don't think there's going to be one, but what do I know, right? They're meeting for 7 minutes and then that's the end of the meeting. That's not a good sign.
Ridiculous.
But it's early yet. It's December. It's not even Christmas. But if let's get ahead in the calendar and hypothetically say the season doesn't start and it goes a few months. It's not going to be good for the hobby, at least on the baseball side of things.
Well, they just had a bet with Brian Kelly on that meeting on whose would last shorter, so that was the reason for 7-minute meetings. But
so Brian Kelly, he got a quick Southern accent. That's about the fastest I've ever seen that happen. But going back to it'll be bad for the baseball side of the hobby. Mm-hmm. Or good, I guess, depending on how you look at it. Every coin has two sides, right? Prices come down. I like to buy. Mike likes to buy. We're not going to buy. It's going to be you like to buy. Like people like to buy, going to have better deals. But people who like to sell aren't going to be that excited about it. So I guess it depends who you are, how you hobby. But I think overall, anytime there's a work stoppage in any sport, it's not good for the sport. I mean, that's just that's
No.
not rocket science. That's just in anything. So hopefully, where that doesn't happen, and we're just talking about it here, and it never comes into play. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike.
I hope so too. I think it's always hard to follow up John because
I was gonna say, was it that good or was it that bad? There was nothing in between. It was either one or the other.
no. It's obviously who thinks it's good for. I mean, let's be honest. Who's going to think it's good for baseball? It's already a sport that is struggling to gain younger fans.
Yes,
they're struggling to build. I mean, who's the face of baseball? Mike Trout, who's hurt the last 3 years?
It's like Rich said in the comments at the Dallas show this weekend. He says no one cared about the new baseball players whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think they're struggling to find an identity with their sport.
Mm-hmm.
And, other than being greedy, money hugging, I mean, it's money grubbing guys. That's what it feels like because that's what it is. It's not a feeling. That's just reality. And good for them, but you're hurting your brand. You're hurting your fan base. It all just seems silly. We said this last week, Drew, when we were talking through it. It's like, why is this happening? And I've read a bunch of stuff since then and understand some of the issues that they're being contentious over. None of them seem insurmountable to me. Nope. And I just want them to play ball. Play ball. And there's some time to make that happen. We got a couple of months, 2.5 months or so till spring training. So, it's not time to just give up hope, but at the same, if it goes into the season, modern baseball card prices will suffer. I think there'll be more gravitation towards vintage. Money can shift, like you said, Drew. Money can be taken out of the hobby, money can come into the hobby, and money can shift around the hobby, right? And a combination of any of those three. Do you see guys moving from baseball to basketball or football or, we'll see. But it's not good for modern baseball if they do that.
Absolutely. And speaking of shifting money, there's new markets coming up every day. And one of the biggest markets that's probably popped up in the last year is the F1 market. And Topps has really done a good job with F1, I think. The releases have been tremendous outside of a couple printing errors, but we've got a lot of excitement in the F1 series. It's down to the last race of the season, and you've got literally the two biggest stars in, at least in the hobby, and probably in the sport as well, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, going at each other, possibly trying to crash each other every other race. But, it's come down to the wire. Final race, basically winner take all here, championship. I think Verstappen wins if it's a tie. But I mean, if you're Topps, you've got to be jumping over the moon after all the bad news you've had this year. You've got this new market, which is taking off like crazy. The F1 market's blown up like you wouldn't believe. But I mean, to have it come down to this, I mean, you can't script it better. And it's done wonders for the market itself. I'm in a couple of Facebook Discord rooms and Facebook rooms, some Discord rooms, some Clubhouse rooms and everything, all related to the F1 hobby as I try and learn it a little bit, as I'm not fully adept at everything outside of some of the bigger guys. But this is a perfect storm brewing right here on a brand new hobby market. And when you talk about shifting money in the hobby, I think you're going to see a lot of money start shifting towards the F1 market, just like you're going to start to see a lot of it shift towards soccer, which is a different story. But the F1 market right now, you couldn't ask for anything better.
Well, Tops, like you said, Tops is probably ecstatic with some of the news that's come down the pike lately. They're glad they got some good news. I'm not gonna be on screen here, and I'm an honest guy, so I don't know a ton about the sport. I do know those two guys are the best in class, if you will. But I think too, you need more than. I mean, it's hard to compare racing to other sports. There's a lot
Yeah.
less racers to football players, baseball players, and hockey players. So I guess I was going to say, I don't know if two guys can carry a sport, but when the sport is 30, 40 racers, 50 racers,
Yeah.
you don't need as many faces of the sport. And, I don't, it transcendent outside sports when other people know who Lewis Hamilton is that aren't necessarily even F1 fans. So some good news for Tops. They better guard that
Yeah.
license and lock that up for they better. I don't know how long. Do you know how long their license is for? They better sign an extension on that. And but it's amazing. I feel bad. When we talk about F1, I feel bad. I immediately think of Val, Logan, and Jason with NASCAR. Which they are incorporating F1 into their show, but
Yeah.
that's to me I know a lot more NASCAR racers than F1 racers, but it's
Yes.
just that hasn't seemed to get that same buzz and kick effect as F1, like you mentioned, soccer and that sort of thing. We
It's a
did a show.
It's a multi-year deal that started in 2020. So, how many years exactly they didn't say, but as Rich says, the TV series has been generating a ton of fans. But Logan made a great point: 95% of the hobby had no idea who Lewis Hamilton was 9 months ago, and it's true. And I think that's the tremendous thing about this market is that it's sprung up out of nowhere. I mean, when they started making the cards, I thought it was interesting. I thought, okay, Panini's got NASCAR, Topps is going to do their thing. They're going to grab F1. I didn't expect it to be this. I mean, I know it's kind of polo for, polo in terms of cars and at least sport related, but, I didn't expect it to be this. And it
What do you think it's? I mean, what percentage is the overseas market, and what percentage
huge.
is? You think what? But I mean, what percent? 70% is outside of North America, or what? What? I mean, I know it's only a guesstimate, but
I would probably, I would guess from what I've read and what I've seen that a good probably, it's definitely over half. I'd probably go in the 75%.
Yeah.
Probably being overseas, but I think that's changing all the time. I mean, I know I'm trying to learn as much as I can about the F1 market, and strictly because I see it as a growing market. Because I mean, it from what I'm seeing from Topps, it doesn't seem like they're going to put out 24 different products of it every year. It looks like they are going to limit it a little bit.
Not yet. Maybe in 2025 they will.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're waiting. They're gonna have some cardboard to utilize, some paper rolls that they purchased to print some athletes on. So you might see a 20 F1 sets in 2025, which I mean, I think if that I'm half kidding. I don't think that would be good, that many. But I will say this, full disclosure, F1's been good to me with the Montgomery Club.
Yeah.
When it comes to the resale aspect of it. So, it's definitely a hot product. I guess for me, not being a dyed-in-wool race guy, it just always amazes me how that can be red hot, and then other forms of racing
Right.
aren't. As just I guess I'm making it more simplistic than it actually is, but it's just amazing how it doesn't. Other sports that don't get of similar nature don't get a boost as well.
Well, yeah, like I mean, Mike, that's a great question. What do you think made F1, the thing that exploded as opposed to all the other new stuff that we've seen this year? F1's far from the only new type of market or new type of anything that we've seen.
Where did John must have muted himself or something? Oh no, wait, John, you're not muted, are you?
Oh, here, I'm still as ugly as ever.
We can all hope that John gets muted someday, but hey, whatever. No, John knows I'm teasing him, so
yeah.
I just think there's, I think there is a lot of hype with it, and you have really great racers.
Yes.
If you have really great people in it, rookie cards and all this. I remember at the last Dallas show, I had a box of F1 Chrome. I couldn't believe how much I sold it for.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely couldn't believe it. Now John looks frozen on my screen. There he goes. Okay.
I had to switch networks. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. That's all right. But Brian B. Roth 6 says hype created F1, but you have some great racers and it's exciting, and there's nothing that can drive up prices of any sports cards than great performance.
Mm-hmm.
No matter the sport, no matter what, great performances, generational type performances, it creates popularity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And Broth 6 says he'd be surprised if anyone actually collects F1. They do. I'll tell you right now. I'm in multiple Facebook rooms where it's diehard collectors. These are people that are not buying this stuff to just try and flip it real quick. These people are hoarding this stuff right now. Chris Harris asks right now, does the interest in F1 cards have to do more with the spillover from Topps Chrome Panini Prism brands, or are there really this many F1 collectors? So what do you guys think?
Well, like you said, I mean, if I know it's cliche, but you go to the eBay and you check the comps and sold stuff. I mean, this stuff's bringing, I'm talking single cards. I'm not even just talking wax at this point. I'm talking individual cards, they're bringing some serious cash, is it, I don't know if the question is like, are people just trying to, buy it to sell to someone else? Are they PCing a Lewis Hamilton or other racers? Matt, I don't know, but I'm sure, there's people who collect. I don't care what the sport is. We even see cricket cards. A little shout out to Ryan Nolan. He said they're getting harder and more expensive to buy because more people are going after them. So I think just with everything that happened the last couple years, more mainstream news, COVID hit, more idle time for people to open tabs on their computer, some stimulus money. Gas prices were lower at that time. Things were a little more available. It's just like the perfect storm for people to really collect things they have an interest in. And listen, people are watching these races. People are going to the tracks and venues. And so there's people that have an interest in it and, going to spend their money. So I'm not shocked. I just, I'm more like kind of now that things, I know we got another strain now, and I don't want to make this, the Dr. Fauci hour, but, I think when things get really back to normal, we've seen the stimulus stop. We've seen gas prices go up. That's when I think the rubber meets the road, and we're going to see where we really are. And I think, you guys can tell me I'm wrong or right. I think we've seen a lot of stuff correct itself. You want to call it just go down in price. And I know Mike's even pointed out to me, even on the vintage side of the house, things have some things have went down. Now there's some cards, I've talked about this on my show, that are sort of dip proof or market proof. Unfortunately, one of those for me, he's a 1948 Leaf. It don't matter what. There could be an asteroid heading to Earth, and the government announces we can't stop this thing. It's over. Everybody, do what you got to do in your last 2 days on the planet. I still won't be able to buy a 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson for a decent deal. So. But the most part, there are very few that fall into that category. We've seen stuff correct itself. I talked about on social media, I had a great show, and I wanted to buy stuff. People come around with their cases to the table. Hey, you buying? Yeah, I'll take a look. And I picked stuff out that I wanted to acquire. And when I asked them what they had to get for them, they wanted more than like comps and what I could put it in my same showcases for. So how am I gonna unless the only way I would buy that in that case is it's something I would want for my PC and willing to overpay a little bit. But as just say I want to buy this and put it out for resale, if that's the mindset, I'm not going to pay over market, So there's a lot of people that were still I felt like thought it was March of 2021. And it's actually December of 2021. And I think people are having a hard time making that adjustment. But that's where it is, whether you like it or not.
Oh no, absolutely. There's been a major adjustment, and people definitely, at least from the card shows I've been to, a lot of people still have not changed their prices or looked at recent comps. That's for sure. But one thing that I do find awesome, and I think that's great and shows the strength of the hobby is even while, and I wish I had the report here now. I read it right before we went live. That showed basically Google Trends, searches, things like that, and how much interest there was in the hobby. Basically, analytics showing interest in the hobby and how the interest in the hobby has grown exponentially even still since the drop off from 2021 in the prices. So while the prices may be stabilizing some, whatever you want to call them, dropping, stabilizing, ebbing, flowing, whatever it is, the interest in the hobby is growing continuously. And I think that's the most important thing for the hobby, at least moving forward.
Let me ask you guys a question, and I'd love to hear people write down their answer in the chat. We'll take a straw poll here of how many do we have? 20-ish watching or so?
Yes.
So raise your hand, and in the comments, put higher or lower sports card prices in 1 year, December 2022. Are they higher or lower? I'm going to go lower. John?
So I agree. I think they're going to be lower, but like you said, let's see what other people.
Base cards lower, other stuff higher.
Okay, I did make a very grand generalization there, I admit, and I'm just talking about the market.
Okay, the market in general.
Overall, everything.
Okay, if we're encompassing everything, then I've got to think that they're going to be higher because I think we're going to see some major sales of some big cards, and so if we're including that stuff in it as well, I think if we're going to include the high end market as well as the low end market, I think they're going to balance each other out. You might see some more record sales. I don't think they're going to be lower, but I think for a lot of cards, I think you're going to see lower. But overall, I could see a lot of stuff being higher.
And I don't know that that's bad for the hobby. In fact, I could make a very eloquent argument
that it's great
good for the hobby.
Yeah.
Because it allows more people points of entry on cards they might not otherwise add to their collection, which will add to their love for the hobby. Mm-hmm. Their, for God's sake, it's not all about the almighty dollar as much as we like to think it is. And so I actually think people, you're just saying the hobby is going to be bad. No, actually, I think it's wonderful for the hobby for those reasons. And I do think there are going to be some, like you said, Drew, some top end, upper echelon cards that continue to see record sales. But very few of us can afford those anyway. I think I heard John say that on a show one time or something with somebody, like, there's not many people living in that world, right?
No.
Relative to the rest of there's probably a lot of them. There's thousands of people that can afford $1 million cards. none of them are on this show right now.
Right.
And
How do you know?
yeah,
Hey.
how do you know it's in my save?
John, I've heard you say it.
Yeah.
You can't even
Well,
afford
We
a
listen
Jack
to each
Robinson.
other's shows.
If I lived in that atmosphere, I wouldn't be talking constantly about how I don't have a 1948 Leaf Jacket
Right,
Robinson.
exactly.
I think
Exactly.
I gave myself up with that one line of this. So no, you're right, and there is that market is strong, and there, like Mike just said, there's thousands of people spending 6 figures or 7 figures for cards, but there's millions of people in the hobby, and piggybacking off what Drew said, doing this show, I know I'm basing it on the most recent show. There was a lot of people there. Like I said, there were kids buying. I say kids because I'm an old man. Kids can encompass 20-year-olds to me, buying vintage players, or a better way maybe to say it is players that were retired before they were really even born, but they're still respecting the history and going back and collecting or buying those guys. Now, are they buying them to resell them? Is it part of their PC? Only they can answer that. But the fact that they're interested in making those purchases is refreshing to me. I think it bodes well. And even with prices coming down, like Mike said, that's not a bad thing, especially if you have a pair. Like he said, there's more to it than just dollars and cents. If you have a passion to collect, I do both. I collect and I sell. So whatever the market does, I'm going to be fine and adjust and be happy and do, have fun with it either way. And so the hobby's strong. I don't think that's debatable.
No.
And, it's going to be interesting next, I've said this on my show too. The next, 2 to 5 years are going to be definitely interesting. I think the next 2 to 5 years is really going to set the tone probably for the next 10 to 20. Really, it's going to be where we go in the hobby. But it's going to be interesting for sure.
Cooter's point where he says definitely lower across the board, inflation is going to eat disposable income for all but the uber wealthy. His point is incredibly valid. There are so many external factors, non-hobby factors that affect each of our things. I mean, I've taken a break from buying because I want to take care of some personal things and pay off some things and redirect those dollars with 2 kids in college and all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, I'm taking a short hiatus from buying stuff. I've plenty of stuff behind me, as John's seen in person, to enjoy. And so there's, inflation, coronavirus, you name it.
Listen, let's do a CNBC here in February. The loan, what is it called? I should know because my son is on it. The loan forgiveness, not forgiveness, but where they've let the college kids sort of not have to pay back their student loans. That expires coming up here in February. So some of these college kids buying lots of cards instead of paying their college bill. They're going to have to start paying their college bill back, whatever that is.
Deferred. Yeah, they had all this deferment, this automatic deferment that is now going away. Yeah, what Rick says about buy iconic vintage cards, you won't be disappointed. I think he means both monetarily and just the satisfaction of owning the card, right?
Yeah.
You won't be disappointed having these iconic vintage cards. Chasing the hot rookie of the week is a fool's errand, and usually doesn't, just doesn't work out 98% of the time or whatever. And so, there I go, giving doom prophecy. I'm a prophet of doom.
Listen, I'm the one that said the asteroid might be coming.
That was true.
That was a headline I saw this week on the internet, that the asteroid entering the atmosphere, and I immediately checked what Bruce Willis was up to. But I couldn't find out anything.
But I'm definitely in the camp of you, John, in that I think the hobby is strong. I think it's going to stay strong.
Yes.
There's a lot to be seen going forward with all the new, transition to fanatics and all of that. but I think there's a lot of people excited about the hobby. And if we could just maintain that by putting out good products and, helping kids get in the hobby and all these different things that are important for the long-term health of the hobby, it's always going to fluctuate. The values are always going to be ebbs and flows. It's been that way for the 40 years that John and I have done this.
And that's why I mentioned the interest levels, in the study that was done, even as the values drop, the interest is growing and the interest continues to grow. And so that's a sign of a very strong hobby in my eyes, at least from the collecting side of things.
And people always leave the hobby. People always leave the hobby every year, every day, every week. But I think, like Mike said, I think when you're looking at the scales, I think more people are coming into the building than are exiting the building. If you're looking at the turnstiles coming in and out, I think the one measure, ticking as people go through them coming in, I think that turnstile's reading a higher number. Where the problem, where things could change is if that tide changes. I'm not saying I expect it. I don't think it will. But if some factor, something happens that changes that ebb and flow, that's where we can have a different conversation.
And there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of possibilities in the next couple of years with that.
Yeah, look at what's happened the last 2 years. Like Mike just said, we've been doing this a long time, and I wouldn't have predicted a good percentage of a lot of things we've seen, and you just don't know. That's, to me, as an old guy, it's what keeps me kind of on my toes, and it's definitely interested. I always talk about you used to be able to go away from the hobby for a couple months and not miss a thing. Come back like it was one day, right? You can't do that. And not in today's hobby age. So it's a different, we talk about errors in sports. It's a different error in the hobby as well.
That it is.
Nothing should surprise us anymore. I guess is expect things to change and don't be surprised when it does. What does that change look like? None of us know.
No.
Right? Experience is a guide, but it's not, I don't have a prophecy that tells me down here what sports cards. I ask the question generally lower or higher in a year because I don't know any better than anyone else. We're all guessing. Yeah. We all can
all speculation.
Exactly.
We can all read the tea leaves a little bit, and we can all go, if this happens, they'll be lower. If these factors happen, it'll be higher. Right? So just enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. It's a great roller coaster to be on.
Exactly.
Hey, is Miss Cleo still in business? You can call her.
Right. Yeah. That would be about the other one.
She knows.
1-900, sports cards.
Hello, everybody. Miss Cleo knows. Tell you all the answers of the hobby. That's a really terrible.
Well, if anyone.
Get Miss Cleo and Don West together, and you could have a great show. Right
there. Hey, look at this deal right here, everybody! As he drops like the whole display on the floor, and then Miss Cleo says, "I knew that was going to happen. I knew it."
Well, on that note, in case now that we're giving Miss Cleo and Don West ideas on how to make some money, dang it!
Everybody Google Miss Cleo. Like, is she alive? Is she still in business?
Right?
Is she into crypto, NFTs? Yeah. What is?
Tell her to call in if she's into collecting. No. But yeah, well, guys, I guess we'll wrap it up there. This episode of Hobby Hotline, guys, make sure to tune in this Saturday. We've got Brad Bethune, Adam Palmer, and Chris Harris as the host this Saturday coming up. So make sure to tune in at 11 a.m. This Saturday. But yeah, another awesome episode of Hobby Hotline Overtime. Thanks everybody for tuning in this episode, and John and Mike, it's always a pleasure, guys.
Yeah, it was fun. This is the first time I got to do Hobby Hotline with Mike, so it was looking forward to it, and now it's over.
He's going to be like, take me off. If I'm with Mike, take me off the schedule.
No.
I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be.
Listen, I got to do the most horrible Miss Cleo impression ever. It was a good day.
and we got it on the internet forever, so it's perfect. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening and rest of your week, and we will see you guys on Saturday with an all-new cast of characters. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys Saturday. See you.